Thanks for joining us. My name's Ed Huck with Keller Williams, and today we also have,
Catherine Bailey.
yeah,
Hi, everybody.
from the Ed Huck team. So we're happy to be here today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the market. We've done these before. It's our home buyers worksheet, or something workshop. We used to do them all in person. It was a blast. We'll get back to doing that again, I promise. Where we can be a little bit more informal. I'm going to be keeping my eye on the comments on Facebook and on our internal, for the folks that are signed up internally through Zoom. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand or put something in the chat, and I'll be able to get that answered for you. And let's dive right into this. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so thanks for joining us again tonight. So we took a poll and had some questions thrown our way already. So that's kind of how we built this out. And if you have, again, questions during this, feel free to post them as well. But some of the things we're going to be covering tonight are what is the state of the
state?
Yep.
Yeah, what is the state of the real estate market?
Yep.
Which everyone, wants to know. Is this a good time to buy? When will there be deals? Should I rent versus buy? And how to get your offer accepted.
Yep. Plus whatever else you guys want to hear tonight. So what's going on in the real estate market? So there's a big difference. When COVID hit this year, we were really worried about what was going to happen. A year ago, actually exactly a year ago,
Yep.
On St. Patty's Day in Ohio, they shut everything down. And we were all sitting here shaking, going, what's going to happen? And since we've been through a whole year, the interesting thing was for about a month and a half, would you say, Catherine? Maybe 2 months, things really slowed down. I mean, real estate kind of, I wouldn't say screeching halt, but almost, at least in Northeastern Ohio.
Yep.
And then like May, right? I mean, it's like May, we were like shot out of a cannon. It was just go, 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 go. And I know we were still worried, even over the summer months when I was doing those Monday market minutes every Monday, we were trying to analyze how 2020 was versus say 2008 or 2009, 2010, when the whole housing crisis happened. And the good news is we didn't see that at all. I mean, we really didn't see anything, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, which we kind of outlined on here. The main one really just being is back in 2008, it was a financial crisis.
Yep.
This was, just a health crisis, which, I mean, a huge health crisis, but it didn't have financial, it wasn't that our financial system being tied to a whole bunch of bad mortgages, almost collapsing the banks. This was just, again, a health crisis shutting down a lot of industries, which was horrible. And a lot of them are still trying to rebound. But so what's going on with the market? This graph shows everything for sale in the light green, or sold in the dark green over the since 2015. And when you look at this, there was a ton of light green for sale, ton of homes for sale, 05, 08, even before the crash of 08. So we really started to crash in 08. The reason you see it the number of homes, its inventory going down a little bit, was the mortgage, the lenders were not allowed to foreclose, if you remember that, for about 6 to 8 months. So they stopped foreclosing. Then they turned foreclosures back on. That's why you see this other hill of inventory pop up. And then things finally started to stabilize in 13, 14, 15. But if you track this all the way over here to today, the light green, again, is number of homes for sale. And this is pretty much what we would call our broader market. So everything from like I-77 west.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, what have you been seeing?
Yeah,
exactly. You can't even see it. Exactly. And then the dark green is the transfers, ton of transfers. So
Which are
Um,
houses sold.
the
Yep.
houses sold. Yeah. The other thing to look at is average days on market. Their average days on market, on average, homes are selling now and going under contract in about 40 days, which that is also a misnomer, because what's really happening is homes are selling in 3 days or they're selling in 80, 90 days. If you really dive into the stats, which I like to do, and everybody on the ad hoc team either likes to do it or they hear it from me anyway, so they're informed about all this. But yeah, what we're really seeing is it's either a short time period they're for sale or more like 80 or 90 days.
And what you have to remember in there too is when it says time on market, it, like Ed said, it could go under contract in 3 days, but it takes that extra time for the title and the lender and all the background work to be done. So that's why they're saying 40 days, because they're building that in. But really, for you to see it and make an offer on it right now is about 3 to 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So average price is the red line over that same time period. You can see how, in 05, we were tracking at an average price of 175 or a little under 200,000. It crashed down to 140, 125. And then we've been tracking up ever since. These ups and downs that you're seeing here are actually the seasonality of real estate, and that more expensive homes sell in the summer. Historically, the 3-4 bedroom colonials in the burbs sell when the kids are out of school in the summer, and some of the condos and say smaller homes tend to sell in the winter. So that's why you see that. But overall, if you were to drop a line through the middle of all those, you see we bottomed out in about 12, and we've been tracking back up ever since.
Also, with our weather being this part of the country, that impacts our sales too.
It does. Yeah, exactly. So people don't want to maybe move in the winter. So we see that a lot, which that's a great point. So if you go look at Florida's, theirs is a lot more even, because the folks that don't want to move during school, a lot of the Northerners are moving in the winter. So it's kind of it kind of helps balance things out. Anyway, everybody's heard the term, or maybe you haven't, but a buyer's market, seller's market, neutral market. This explains what that means in realtor speak, meaning months worth of inventory. So if I have 100 homes for sale and I'm currently selling 30 a month, basically in 3 months, I'll be 3.3 months, I'll be out of homes to sell. So that would mean we have 3.3 months worth of inventory. So that's how we do the math on that. But this shows, again, we moved into this neutral market in about 2012, and it's been a seller's market since 2015, and it's never, ever, ever been a stronger seller's market. At least I know for as long as this graph goes back, which is 20 something years, or I've been selling since 92, it's never been a stronger seller's market. So what's that mean to a buyer though, right? Let's dive into some live graphs real quick. So it's sometimes a little hard to see on that bigger graph, but when we look at this buyer's market graph, when I only take the last 2 years instead of the last, say, 15, really kind of puts in perspective. So if you look at the first 2 months and 10 days worth of 2020, we were sitting at a 1.7, meaning take 1.7 months to sell off our inventory. This, if you want to call it winter slash what's it spring? Spring next. When's the first day? 2 weeks. Is it 20th? Yeah, soon. We're sitting at 0.6. So it's increased by 64%. And then if you go back to solds and new listings, for that same time period. So there's 61% less available homes to sell for the first, basically 2.5 months worth of 2020 versus 21. New listings is down 22%. and sold is actually up 3.7%.
See, isn't that interesting?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That tells the story right there. I mean, it really does. It's that they're flying off the shelf. So, so that's a little bit about the market. Again, if you want more detailed information on your specific neighborhood, we can do this, you know, for specific price ranges, for specific neighborhoods. And, you know, when you work with anybody on our team, before we even make an offer, you can dive into this stuff and see which communities are hot or which communities might be not as hot. But is this a good time to buy? That was another great question. So, Catherine, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. And you know what? Yes. 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 Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
I wish I had to buy a house right now. Because right now, for first-time home buyers or for anyone looking to grow their home, make changes, especially with COVID, if you want more room, boy, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you know, one of the biggest reasons is the rates.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, interest rates right now are very, very, very low. Some of the lowest they've ever been. You know, when you look at this graph, it shows that this actually goes back about 25 years, but today the rate's at about 3% for a 30-year fixed. That's the blue line. You can see it kind of ticked up a little bit after 06, like 2014. It's kind of hovering in that 4-ish range and then has dropped all the way down. And again, you know, the reason the rich get richer is because they really can grasp the power of interest rates, whether it's compound interest rates, if you're savings money or if you're borrowing money. And this always shocks people, doesn't it, Catherine, when we go over this?
This is such a great visual to show you the value that you have by buying now as opposed to waiting.
Yeah. So, you know, if you look at this and it says, okay, rates are, if you were to borrow $350,000, and this works for any number, but I just picked 350. So that's kind of like the median sale price of a house in Westlake. So if you borrow $350,000 at today's rate of 2.9%, your payment is $1,456. Now that does not include insurance or taxes, but it's $1,456 for your principal and interest. Let's assume the sky falls and we depreciate at 15% in the next couple of years, which during the crash, so most of Western burbs crashed at about 20 to maybe some were at 25, but most of them weren't. For single family homes, condos crashed a little bit more, closer to by 30, 35% of value. Again, we talked about that a little bit earlier. All the reasons that this could potentially maybe be a little bit of a shift in the market. I don't think it's going to be, because from reasons we're going to talk about soon. But when we do hear a buyer say, oh my gosh, I want to wait for a deal. I want to wait till I think the market's going to pop. Okay, great. The market did pop. Well, guess what else is going to happen? Rates are going to go up. Rates are not going to continue to stay this low. And if they'd only go up 1.5% and you were to borrow $297,000 on the house that you want to borrow, so that's a 15% reduction. The rates went up to 4.4%. The payment's still more. It's $1,489. Yeah. I mean, it's just shocking to see that on paper. And I think when you really get a chance to see that, and you know, if you say, okay, well, never mind, I want to buy, and if you wanted to buy the same 350, what's that payment going to be? I could tell you real quick. I bet you it's
yeah, do the 350 at 4.4. Well, and two, you've got to, and then you think about over 30 years, right?
That's great.
Even if you're not going to stay there 30 years, let's say over 10, 12 years, it's a chunk of money.
It's $300 a month. It's $1,752 to borrow $350,000 at 4.4, which, you know, Catherine and I are old enough to know.
Yeah.
That 4.4 is a great rate.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
couple of years ago, we were killed to have 4.4.
Oh my gosh, 20
No.
years ago, we won't even go there. It was
Right.
18%.
Oh my gosh.
30 years ago. But yeah, I mean, even if it goes up a little, that's still a great rate. But look at the savings if you do it now at 2.9.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to Catherine's point, if you say, okay, I'm going to still borrow 350 in a couple of years at 4.4. So let's say that things didn't appreciate either. They were just flat. And I'm going to wait 3 or 4 years and I'm going to borrow that same 350. It could potentially cost me $300 a month.
More.
Do the math on that. That's $3,600 a year.
Yep.
Times 10 years, that math I can do in my head. That's $36,000 over the course of 10 years that I would have could potentially saved by pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
Trigger now.
And just think what you could do with that $300 a month. That's a car payment. That's putting away for college tuitions. That's vacation money. That's paying medical bills. That's significant.
Yep, that's crazy. I mean, it really is. It's shocking to see these kind of numbers. When will it change? When will there be deals again? We don't have a crystal ball. And my joke is, if I did, I probably wouldn't be selling real estate. I'd be on a boat in the Bahamas somewhere with my kids on the beach permanently. But we can kind of have some idea of what's been going on. Catherine and I were just talking about this.
Yep.
People don't realize it, but during the financial crash and housing crash of 2008, builders stopped building houses. If you were to look around, there's a lot of local builders that are not here anymore. A lot of the national builders pulled right out.
Yep.
Some of them got bought out or consolidated, but nobody stopped having babies. So we needed these houses, and I forget the exact number, but they just told us at the Keller Williams convention, we were off like 100. Is it 1 million homes a year? Some stupid number, really huge number. Every year we were behind as far as needing for housing, and the builders are starting to catch up. And I was just reading an article, I forget somewhere that was talking about this, how this is a national crisis, that we don't have enough affordable
housing.
Yeah. We don't.
Yeah. I was on a Zoom yesterday with agents from all over the country, because it's interesting to see, comparisons across states, and everybody's experiencing this in some way, shape, or form. But it was interesting that they were saying that, in the past, typically we looked at people living in their houses, on average about 7 years. Well, now we're saying it's 12 to 13 years.
Yep.
That, coupled with the fact that things weren't being built over the last 10 years, it makes sense that there isn't enough houses right now.
It does. Yeah. And I know, so what's if I came to you, Catherine, and said, hey, I want a new house. I want a new 2,500 square foot house. And I even said, I didn't care where it was, but it's on the west side. What's the cheapest you could find me from?
Well, we'd have to sit down and really, because I wouldn't even want to tell you a number, because right now the market is so crazy that things are going over list price, asking price.
What about new construction? What is it?
Well, new construction.
New construction.
Yeah, you'd be able to find something. It's going to take some time because it takes time to build.
But what price range do you think? If I had to start from scratch and say, okay, I want to buy an Avon. What's the cheapest I could build a home for? I would bet you
4-bedroom.
Yeah.
4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. I'd say $350.
Yeah, every penny. And that, and it's probably low.
That's not with all the goodies.
No, and that's no yard, no finished basement, no patio, no drapes, no nothing. I mean, right, it's probably $400 to $450 by the time you're in.
Yep, by the time you put your countertops in and all of that. Yep. And
the builders know it, so that's why, and that'll sell like a hotcake, and that's why. I mean, it's just thinking about where they're building in Avon too. That might not be the best locations, but they're building them and they're selling like hotcakes.
Yep.
Anyway, so lack of new housing. Catherine already mentioned people staying in place longer. And, you know, some of the you see that a lot with, you know, yeah, my stepfather's had, you know, like both knees replaced, one of his hips replaced. You can still do stairs, you know, and everybody's staying put longer.
Mhm.
And I would argue, especially areas like West Park and Lakewood, you know, I'm in my early 50s now, and my generation, everybody started in Lakewood. I mean, that was kind of the joke, right? It was like, okay, I'm starting in Lakewood. And my first house, I rented a double in Lakewood. Then I bought a double in Lakewood. Then I moved out of the double and bought a single in Lakewood. But then eventually moved to the burbs. And that was kind of the thing.
Yeah, the
And
process.
yeah, now nobody's moving out.
Mhm.
The millennials and the 20 to 40-year-olds they love the walkability. They love the parks. They love the shopping. They love the restaurants. And, you know, this is just a quick example. I mean, and interesting twist to that, we've got people, empty nesters, moving from the burbs back to the new construction in Ohio City and Tremont and Lakewood.
Yeah.
So you've got all this demand kind of going back that way too, which is interesting. But anyway, to your point, they are staying in their houses longer. The only big question mark we still have right now is there are homes in forbearance. And what forbearance means is, for a lot of you watching the news last summer, it was a hot topic where the government told the lenders this time, not like in 08, but told them, you cannot foreclose on anybody's house right now.
Mhm.
We're going to put a kibosh to that and stop that. You're going to let these houses go into what's called forbearance. I own a house, I'm allowed to stop making my house payments. And then depending on each lender and depending on the situation and my personal situation, they might let me tack those payments on at the end. They
Mhm.
might make me have to make all those payments up in one fell swoop that I didn't pay. If you're in that situation, go call your lender, call an attorney. We can help point you in the right direction to show you how to handle that. But there are a lot of homes right now that are in forbearance, meaning that their homeowners are not making payments and they're living in them, and the government won't let the banks foreclose on them. So when they finally flip that switch back on and say, okay, guess what? You need to start making your payments or sell your house, or we're going to foreclose on it. We're not sure how much that's going to affect the inventory levels. And Catherine and I were joking, and not about those people's situations. We feel for them because all those are the people that are in the restaurant and travel and those industries that got clobbered by this whole thing. But we could use inventory. And the silver lining, one of the things that makes this shift in the market different than in 08, most people have a ton of equity. And even the people in forbearance have a lot of equity.
Mhm.
So if they had to sell, they probably have money in their house. They're not writing checks like they were back in 2012 and 13 or 14 to get out of their houses. This go around, they actually have some cash, and they'll be able to probably land on their feet and just have to sell the house to get the equity out of it, basically. But even if there were to be a bunch of those homes for sale right now, that wouldn't hurt where we're at. It might even only put us back to last year's levels, which wouldn't be a bad thing, because that was still a strong seller's market. We have a few minutes here, so let's do this rent versus buy calculator.
Yeah, this is so interesting.
Oops. So right on realtor.com, you can go to rent versus buy and plug in your situation. And I just threw in some numbers here. I assumed, okay, let's look for houses in North Olmsted. Let's pretend I want to pay $225,000. Let's say I want to put down 10%. I plug this number in here and it's probably low, but let's say I could rent this same kind of house for $1,750 a month. It probably would be more than that, but let's guess low. I have to put $1,750 down for my deposit. My renter's insurance is about $23 a month. I'm not paying any broker fees to go rent anything. You'd probably go right to the owner. And let's pretend that rent appreciates at about 2% annually. If I'm buying, this actually pre-printed an interest rate of 3.17, which again, it's actually lower than that now.
Mhm.
Says closing costs about 3%, property tax $450 a month, maintenance fee. This defaults to say, okay, what if I put 1% of my home's value into an account every year for future repairs? So basically, in this case, it turned out to be $187 a month that I just throw into a savings account. So when I need a roof, so when I need a furnace, whatever, I've
Yep.
got the money. And then about $800 a month for homeowners. And then I even said, okay, what if we had to throw another $100 a month in on top of that? Because you don't want to do your snow or cut your grass or anything else. And let's say it costs about 8% to sell and your home appreciates at only 3% a year, which our average was about 3 to 4. So before the crash, we were about 3 to 4, then we crashed down. And since then we were about 3 to 4. And then the last 2 years, it's been more like 7 or 8, but
Yeah, it's really gone up.
let's just say it's 3 though. This shows that your break-even point is actually before your 2-year mark. So, and that takes into consideration, because sometimes you'll hear people say, well, yeah, what if I take this $22,000 and I put it into somewhere and I'm going to make some money off it? I'm going to put it into my 401k or the stock market or whatever. This even takes that into consideration and says, okay, what if you were to take that 22.5 and you're going to rent and I'm going to go get an annual return of 4%. You can even jazz that up. Say, let's say I can get 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's be crazy.
Where are you getting that?
Exactly. I know a guy. I know a guy. But if you know a guy and you can get 10% on that money, which I would argue, the stock market is, let's say it's about 8.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you look at, like a 10-year period, it's 7-8%.
Mhm.
Let's do 8. That says it's still about 4 years is your break even. 3.5 to 4 years is your break even point when it would make sense to purchase. But that's again pretty aggressive that you can get 8% return. This is a great resource though to sit down and we can help you figure out what these numbers could look like. So if it does make sense to rent versus buy.
Well, and especially rents are going up. There isn't as much out there to do that. And when you look at the numbers there, if the first one was 18 months, after 18 months, you're breaking even, meaning that buying a house is saving you money over renting. And you're building equity in the house. It's an investment in your future. It just makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And when you talk to someone in our team, we really look at this as we're your real estate advisors. We'd love to help you buy a house, but hey, maybe rent. And we've had these conversations with folks, especially during the crash. I mean, you'd have transferees coming in and say, hey, I'm going to be in Cleveland for 3 to 4 years. And I'm like, rent, don't buy. Because everything was depreciating. So why would you buy a house when we knew everything was depreciating? Now, if you go put that rent versus buy calculator, we're appreciating at 7-8%. It's going to be way faster than the 2 years even that you're going to more than break even. So again,
absolutely. And I think that's a great resource tool. Yep. And, again, if you need help kind of, figuring that whole thing out, we'd be happy to help you do that.
Yep. Now, getting down into some of how we get offers accepted in today's market. So I guess, Catherine's out there in the nitty gritty, trying to get these offers accepted. I guess, what are some of the things you're doing or other people on our team are doing?
Well, first of all, you want to walk in and make the strongest offer you possibly can, which means that you want it to be the simplest solution for that seller. You want it to be easy. You want it to be, it doesn't cost them money, and something that, they can look at and feel they're walking away making a good decision. So one of the best things is you don't have very many contingencies. You take off the contingencies right away. And contingencies are things that you ask the buyer to do before you buy the house. And we would sit with you and go through what some of the things were that you felt comfortable taking off the table, and things that we think, nope, we still want you to go through with that. Also, with financing. Right now, there's a lot of different ways that people are looking at how to bring money to the offer. Of course, there's always savings and those sorts of things, but it's really a time for you to have a conversation with your lender and your tax person, because some people are really looking at gift money that they've received, that they're able to either put down a larger down payment, which looks very strong to a seller, or they're able to use that money at closing and actually help the seller pay for some of the seller's expenses with some of that money. So there's different ways to use that cash that you're thinking about using for a down payment. Conventional financing is always the best because it's the safest and the strongest. We said don't ask for cash back from the seller. That was very typical up to what, Ed, a year ago?
Yeah, that just kind of really shifted when I would say last year we finally, it started to become such a strong enough seller's market where we're like, maybe that's one thing we pull off the table. 2 years ago, for sure, let's ask for seller's cash to provide some cash back. It can't hurt to, why not? And you're financing the money at a low rate, so why not do it?
Yeah, and right now it's, again, the simpler the better. And the big one right now is the appraisal values, because things are going up. People are concerned, is this thing going to appraise? The good news is, everybody, that appraisers are really starting to look at the last 3 to 6 months. And so some of this appreciation they're actually allowing. So there can be huge, of course, that's not every appraiser, but 6 months ago, we were thinking, shoot, they're looking at houses that sold at the end of 19 or mid 19 and comparing them to things that were being sold in 2020. Now we're looking more at things that actually sold in 2020. So, but needless to say to that, if there's any way you can help cover the difference in appraisal value, that's called an appraisal shortfall coverage, that also will help the seller.
Big time. Yeah. That's if you're not coming in with cash and you've got the wherewithal to help cover that difference, that's been a huge one. Because most of my time is spent with our sellers. And that's one of the things we kind of look at for sure.
Removing inspection contingencies. That's being done. We always recommend, though, that an inspection be done, but there are situations, and I just had 2 of them in the last week, where a previous buyer that had, for some reason, had to leave the deal already did an inspection. So the seller already had an inspection report that was done by a very, reputable company. So my buyer said, you know what, we're going to take the inspection off the table. We're going to look at the inspection that you've given us. We accept, the things that are in there. So that's a one case instance, but typically we do recommend you get an inspection, but there are ways to frame it that perhaps you wouldn't expect the seller to pay for any repairs. That's one example. Also, and Ed and I were talking about this, because things are moving so quickly, when you are in a showing, really look at the house. It has to be a detailed showing, because typically right now, most houses, you do not have a chance to go back and look at it again. So with your agent, you really should try to have at least 30 minutes with that house, if not more, if you can get more, because this is the time where you're really making those decisions. The writing strong offers from the start. There's something called an escalation clause, which is basically kind of hedging your bets. You're going to try to go over a competitor. Right now with escalation clauses, it just mucks the waters. You really need to go in with your strongest offer, your best offer. Because most times than not, it's going to be a best and final, which means you've got to go in with your best offer first. You've got to have a strong buyer agent. I think that's needless to say with all the options that are out here right now. This is a very different sort of buying experience than it was up to even a year ago, with really needing someone to be your advocate and navigator for you through the process. Writing a letter to the seller. We've always felt that this was a good idea to personalize the approach and why you love the house and why you see yourself in that house. And then this is an interesting one, is to look at homes that have been on the market longer than a week, which is incredible to even be putting that on paper. But looking at that's considered an old listing.
Yeah. Oh, it's been for sale for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But really maybe take a step back and start to look at some of those. I've even started to advise my clients that we need to relook at their pre-approval number, because a lot of times people are going in at their highest pre-approval number and they can't offer more.
Right.
And then people are disappointed. So
Yep.
it's reevaluating the pre-approval number and what level of price home we're looking at. And then finally, look at homes that really do need some TLC. A lot of people right now don't want to do anything to a house. They want to be able to walk in and have an HGTV moment and have it all done. They want to be able to open up the door and be at the end of the episode when it's all done. But it really makes sense sometimes to be able to get into a house that may need a little bit of help, and just look at that as something that you're going to invest in over time, and you'll be able to get into a house you love and be able to be the offer that's taken.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the other thing we've sat down and figured out and kind of helped everybody see on one big overview spreadsheet is we've come up with a smooth move program that outlines the 7 different ways that you can actually make a move in today's market. And if you have more questions about that or are interested in that, reach out to your favorite Ed Huck team realtor or give me a call direct, and I can hook you up with one of our amazing agents that will actually kind of outline all the ways we can help you take advantage of today's interest rates, take advantage of today's great sale prices for the sellers, and make sure you're not homeless. So we've got 7 ways outlined to actually to help you through that whole process. Reach out to us. We'd love to answer any of those good questions for you. I did also, I'm not supposed to be checking my phone during these, but my wife did say somehow we lost the Facebook feed. So what we're going to do is post this back as a video. We'll probably do that tomorrow. But oh well. So I did get it turned back on, but it's just only the last 6 minutes. So we'll pull the whole thing down, and then we'll repost it and share it. So, but if anybody has any questions after they've watched this, yeah, just reach out to us. So,
and please share this with the people in your life you care about, because they're definitely, this is a challenging market. It's competitive, but it's not impossible.
No, that's a great point.
There's ways for you to be able to sell your home and have it make sense for you, and there's lots of ways to be able to buy a new home too.
And we were talking about that just today's meeting. It's a time on market problem, right? We've already looked at the stats. So more homes are selling than they were last year, and last year was a great year. And it's really just, okay, how do I get to it quickly? How do I get in there? And how timing and selling my house. And it's a little bit too complicated to go over tonight on this. But in each situation is so different that it's almost a one-on-one in-depth conversation.
Absolutely.
So reach out to us and we can help guide you. And as Susie always likes to say, we've never had anybody, sleeping in their car, homeless. We've been able to get everybody, transition. And there's pros and cons to all the different options that are available for you out there. So, but yeah, just reach out to us and we'll help you through the whole thing. So
we'd love to.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Catherine. And
thank you, Ed. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hopefully everybody learned something tonight. And yeah, so again, thanks again. Enjoy your evenings, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.